Someone had a good question before we began. Everyone's annual report was accepted and approved, and we used that data to aggregate all of our data for the statewide annual report that is submitted to the money committees of the General Assembly. We had these great pictures on our cover this year from Norfolk. They submitted all of these different photos from this project. This is within interior design on 1088 Granby Street in the city. And it was previously Ogle Auto Repair and Machine Work Company. And this top photo is from about 1916. And then the one next to it is from 2019. And so the building now houses a design team on the bottom floor and a construction team on the mezzanine. The company leveraged $995,000 for a grant award of $100,000. And I will be talking about the pictures that are scattered through the report as we go on. I really think it's important to have the pictures of the projects in the annual report and also in presentations. It really tells a story of the program. It's not just numbers and words, but it's actual businesses who are using our incentives and benefiting from them. And it helps tell that story to folks. So welcome everyone. If you're not used to Google Meets, this is just a little overview of what your buttons are on your screen. You have your microphone button to turn on and off, your camera button, your settings, the red button for you to leave the meeting, but don't leave now, please. You can see your attendees and then the chat box. I ask that you please mute yourself, and you're welcome to go ahead and turn your camera off if you would like during the presentation. The session is being recorded, and there will be time for questions using the chat feature and also video feature at the end. If you have a question that you don't want to forget, you can type it in the chat, but I will get to all of the questions at the end. So let's start by taking a look at a visual or snapshot of what the grant looked like in grant year 2021. We had 50 businesses that received job creation grants, and they created 4,115 jobs. Those were jobs that were either created or retained. And we say that because that includes jobs that were created in previous years that were retained and still received grants in grant year 2021. We had over 2.4 million in total grant awards for job creation grants in 2021. There were 114 properties who received real property investment grants, and they leveraged over $307 million in qualified investments to receive over $11 million in total awards. So let's do a brief overview of the program. As you all know, it's a partnership between the Commonwealth of Virginia and local governments that's designed to help incentivize job creation and real property investment. Our goal is to promote local and regional economic development and revitalization, particularly in areas that are considered economically distressed. And distress factors that were used to determine designation included unemployment rate, median household income, and free or reduced price lunches in schools. This is a photo of the downtown Hampton Landing Hotel that completed a $2.1 million renovation on the waterfront in the city of Hampton, and they received a real property investment grant totaling $100,000. Here's a map of the enterprise zones, and when used in conjunction with other local, state, and federal programs, enterprise zone incentives can leverage substantial private sector investment for economic development localities across the Commonwealth. And currently there are 45 enterprise zones, as you can see on this map, throughout the state that encompass approximately 245 square miles and include zones in 20 cities, 34 counties, and 12 towns within those counties. The Real Property Investment Grant provides funds to offset hard construction costs, and we refer to those costs as qualified real property investments. These investments are incurred by property owners, tenants, and developers for properties being constructed, expanded, and also rehabilitated in enterprise zones. So one question that we get asked a lot is, how do we figure out who the grantee is if we have a developer, if we have a landlord-tenant situation? The important thing to remember is that it's the entity that's capitalizing on the investment in their books for tax purposes. And on this slide, we have a photo of Lillian Lumber Company and Lumber Yard in Northumberland County. The company recently celebrated its 110th anniversary and the completion of a new drive-through lumber yard and contractor showroom. The company was the first to mill lumber in the Northern Neck to manufacture windows and doors. The company invested $550,000 in remodeling and expansion of its retail store, consolidating 2 branches, and it received a $100,000 RPIG award. In grant year 2019, solar-only projects were added to the program, as well as a lower threshold for other projects that include solar panels. A zone investor must invest in solar panels costing at least $50,000 to be considered for a real property investment grant. New construction projects that include solar panels that cost at least $50,000 require zone investors to spend at least $450,000 in order to qualify for an RPIG. Solar-only projects of at least $50,000 and no more than $100,000 do not have a QRPI amount to meet in order to be eligible for grant funding. So solar as part of a larger project lowers the overall threshold by $50,000. For rehab and expansion projects, a zone investor must invest at least $100,000 in qualified investments to be eligible for the RPIG. New construction projects require zone investors to spend $500,000 in order to qualify, as you can see from this chart. Grant awards for all property types are based on the amount of investment made in excess of those thresholds. So for a QRPI of less than $5 million, the program provides grants up to 20%, and that's not to exceed $100,000 within a 5-year consecutive term. But for a project that's more than $5 million, the maximum amount of grant funding is $200,000 within a 5-year consecutive term. Enterprise zone grants are subject to an annual appropriation by the General Assembly, and by statute, the JCGs have to receive funding priority, and that's why we often have proration. The examples that you have here are from the previous year. Actually, these are from this year. This is without proration. We had no proration of the grants this year. So everyone received the maximum amount eligible.
Kate, we're still seeing just the real property investment grant slide. The previous slide, I don't think.
Are you seeing, do you have the blue chart?
Yeah.
Okay. Here are 2 examples of projects who received real property investment grants. This is Faratech Solutions on the left in the city of Martinsville. They invested over $777,000 in the rehab and expansion of their facility, and the company received $100,000 in RPIG funds. On the right is a neat project in Henrico County. This is Nova of Virginia Aquatic Center. It's a component of the Regency Square Mall shopping redevelopment. The Aquatic Center was built in the former Macy's department store, and it represented an over $8 million investment to receive $200,000 RPIG award. Job creation grant funds are to incentivize the creation of full-time jobs with health benefits that pay well above minimum wage in enterprise zones. Qualifying businesses can receive up to $800 for each net new permanent full-time position created above a baseline 4-job threshold for a 5-year period. Eligible firms can receive grants up to 350 new positions created per year for a maximum of 5 years, but we do have the ability to add additional 5-year terms onto that. Retail, food and beverage, personal service, and nonprofit are not eligible for the job creation grants. And eligible firms in high unemployment areas receive a lower threshold base amount. And we're going to go over that in more details in another slide. So let's get into the charts and the tables of what the grants looked like for grant year 2021 specifically. So this is grant funds dispersed by program. You can see in the pie chart that 82% were real property investment grants and 18% were job creation grants. Overall, 164 grants were issued to 157 unique investors and businesses. That's because some businesses received both a job creation grant and a real property investment grant. Zone investors leveraged over $307 million in qualified investments, with the average qualified investment per grant being $2,693,000. So as you can see, we have mostly real property investment grants and a smaller amount of job creation grants. The next figure and table show the difference between allocations and requests for grants over the last 10 years, so from 2011 to 2021. And due to increased program funding in 2020 and 2021, the proration was lower in 2020 than it had been since 2013, as you can see right here on the 2020 bar graph. And 2021 was the first time in 10 years that a surplus existed, with a surplus of $1,167,191. Grant year 2015 had the largest shortfall in the past decade, with approximately 4.7 million more funds requested than dispersed, and that required a 67-cent proration on the dollar for grants dispersed. After taking a look at the data and analyzing what it looked like compared to previous years, it's very likely that projects that received funding in grant year 2020 or 2021 also likely began their construction in 2019 or early 2020 before the pandemic began. And so projects eligible for these funds for this past grant year received their final placed in service documentation in calendar year 2021. And this likely affects the projects least impacted by pandemic-related construction and supply chain delays. RPIGs are rewarded to zone investors who make investments in very widely varying amounts, ranging from $100,000, which is the required threshold for those rehab and expansion projects, up to more than $10 million, with the figure on this slide showing data for the last 5 years. As you can see in orange, that's your $500,000 to $999,999 section. And that has the largest amount. You can see that the smaller amount is your 10 million and up investments. For this past grant year, investments range from $57,247 for a solar only project to $34,241,147 for a new construction project. Investments in that orange range that we just talked about comprise 27.7% of the amounts of total QRPI, and that's very similar, as you can see, to past years. Investments in the 5 million to 10 million range, which is in this kind of bright blue color, comprise 22.6% of the projects this year, which is about 3% more than the previous year. Here are some more examples of zone investors who received RPIGs last year. The first on the left is Ferguson Enterprises. They completed construction on the company's third headquarters building in the city of Newport News. And this headquarters is an 8-story building with 260,000 square feet of office space. They invested over $82 million in this new building and received a $200,000 real property investment grant. And the two pictures on the right are for Moog Incorporated in the city of Galax. It is a worldwide designer, manufacturer, and integrator of precision motion control products and systems. Their high-performance systems control military and commercial aircraft and satellites. The company invested $5.4 million in rehab costs, and it was awarded $200,000 in RPIG funds. So let's take a look at what RPIG looks like by property use. RPIG funding is only available for investments made to commercial, industrial, or mixed-use properties where a minimum of 30% of the usable floor space is devoted to either your commercial or your industrial, and that includes office space within the commercial specification. Retail and office properties are considered to be commercial, as I said, and commercial projects have consistently made up the largest share, as you can see in the bright blue on the graphs. They've consistently been over 70% each year. Grant cycles 2019 and 2021 had slightly more of those commercial applications and more awarded for industrial properties at 11.5%, 12%, and 17%. And as you can see on the graph, the gray is your mixed use properties. They've consistently been between 10 and about 12% of the RPIGs for the last 5 years. This is a graph of your property improvements by end use and project type. So property improvements that are eligible include your new construction, your rehab and expansion, your solar only, and then those projects that are rehab and expansion or new construction with solar. So this shows the share of RPIG awards by type over the last 5 grant year. Solar only projects were eligible for the first time in grant year 2020, and this new regulation included that new lower threshold. The largest share of grants, as you can see in the green over the last 5 years, was consistently for your rehab projects. And that's followed in the light blue by the new construction projects. Investors who were expanding existing buildings and facilities with rehab expansion with solar projects and solar only projects had the smallest share of grants awarded. The high number of rehab projects demonstrates the revitalization goals of the program are being fulfilled. And let's see. There are multiple factors contributing to why those rehab of commercial spaces make up a majority of those RPIG awards. And that's probably because many of the enterprise zones encompass your downtown areas, your commercial corridors within the enterprise zones, and they see a very significant number of your more small and mid-size commercial rehab projects for things like restaurants, office space, and other commercial uses. Other resources in those areas, such as other DHCD programs like the Main Street program or local rehab and tax incentives, also probably help encourage that rehab and adaptive reuse over the demolition and new construction projects. And as you can see on this graph, in the 2021 grant cycle, the average qualified real property investment was highest for new construction at $5.03 million. And this was followed by expansion by about $2 million and rehab at $2 million as well. Rehab and expansion with solar had an average QRPI of 563,551, and solar only had one project this past year in the orange that you can see that looks almost flat, with a total of 57,247 in qualified investments. The average award by property improvement type followed a very similar trend to what you can see. The average RPIG for new construction projects was the highest, and that was followed by your rehab and then for your expansion projects. And then, as you can probably imagine, due to the higher threshold requirement for your new construction projects, the highest average RPIG was awarded for new construction. Those qualified zone investors include property owners who are either occupant or non-occupant, owners of a space within a larger building or facility, your tenants, and then also your developers. And as this shows, a non-occupant property owners had the most common type of qualified zone investor in the previous 5 years. And that's in your orange. However, in 2021, owner occupants were the most common, and that is in your gray. This was followed by non-occupants, tenants, and then your developers. And our program requires that investors capitalize and or expense their investment in order to qualify for those RPIGs. The program is not open to developers who will not be expensing or capitalizing on that cost. And that's why you see that developers are a smaller number here on the graph. Here are a few more examples of projects that received RPIGs last year. The two on the bottom are from the Allegheny Highlands Industrial Heritage and Technology Discovery Center in Covington. And it's a project that was developed by the Historical Society there as part of an area-wide effort to create a heritage trail and then boost revitalization in the community. And it showcases the history of the area from the last 275 years and is an interactive experience for all ages, as you can see in the picture with the children playing in the museum. They had a total qualified investment of over $879,000 and received a $100,000 RPIG. And at the top, you have Moss Cakes, which is a locally owned bakery in the city of Danville. And they invested over $464,000 and received a real property investment grant of a little over $62,000. So let's jump into some of our data on the job creation grants. So DHCD awarded a total of $2,493,393 in job creation grants to 50 businesses in 2021, as you can see on the table. JCG requests represented 18% of the total funds requested and awarded by DHCD. And this shows the 5-year trends in qualified businesses applying for these grants. Over the 5-year period, job creation peaked in this past year in 2021 and in 2018. 4 companies applied for the maximum number of positions, which is 350, eligible for the program. And in addition, 3 other companies applied for 250 or more jobs. Those top job creators were located throughout the state in cities like Norfolk, Hampton, Newport News, and Lynchburg, as well as Pittsylvania County. JCG award amounts are based on your wage rates for new positions created by grant eligible firms. I'm going to go over this now, but I know that there's a little bit of confusion about the new minimum wage requirements. Before I go over this, I want to say that we are going to go over those new requirements at the end of the presentation. For new positions created by eligible businesses in high unemployment areas, an award of $500 per position is available for employees earning between 150 and 199% of the federal minimum wage and can receive a higher amount for paying over 200% of the minimum wage. For all other areas that are not HUAs, they must pay at least 175% of the federal minimum wage and can also receive a higher grant for 200% of the minimum wage or over. So this figure shows that approximately 21% or 115 jobs of the total jobs in HUA localities were given $500 grant awards for exceeding that minimum. Excuse me. And approximately 3% of the total JCG awards were awarded for $500 grants for meeting or exceeding the 175% of the federal minimum wage. And 95% of the total were awarded $800 grants. So here, as you can see, most of the grants were for over the 200% threshold in the blue. The orange is your 175% threshold, and then that gray includes those HUA localities. This pie chart shows the job creation grants by sector, and we determined those sectors based on the North American Industry Classification System. As with previous grant cycles, the largest share of qualified firms in 2021 were manufacturers, representing half of all the JCG grantees. Let's see, construction and finance and insurance both had 12% of total qualified firms, and they tied to make up the second largest share of JCG grantees, which was very similar to the past 5 years as well. This year, none of the qualifying firms fell under utilities or management of companies and enterprises, which was also the case in the last 2 previous years. Let's see, some of this is information that we already went over, so I apologize for that, but we do have a great picture here about Hubbard Peanut Company. They expanded their operations into an old grocery store location in the city of Franklin. The 2021 renovations included a 7,000 square foot retail market, cafe, and entertainment venue, as well as installation of new production line and a packaging room for their peanuts. The company invested over $585,000 in the project and received an RPIG of $89,190. In the report, you will see an appendices. The appendices includes zone highlights for Appendix A. Each locality is listed in alphabetical order, and there is a great spiel about either a specific project that happened that received a grant, or aggregating some of the data from your local annual reports that you wrote, telling a story of how many jobs were created in the locality. Maybe if you wrote it in your report that there was some sort of public improvement that was made to help with economic development in the locality, that was included. In Appendix B, we have sorry, I didn't mean to click on that, the state incentive usage by zone. I didn't want to go over this because the chart goes on for 4 or 5 pages, and that chart has the locality and the incentive usage for the last 5 years. That's very helpful for you as an LZA to look at that utilization and kind of see how it has changed and how it can be improved upon, how we can make sure we're utilizing the zone to its full extent. Appendix C is where we list all of the local incentives. Every locality is listed with the local incentives that they have. I've been encouraging everyone to take a look at this, see how your local incentives compare to other localities' incentives. This is a great way to get ideas for new incentives that you might want to bring to your locality. You can contact the LZA from the other locality and ask them how often that incentive is utilized, maybe how they do that, what procedures they use to collect the information. It's just a great way to share best practices by looking at those other local incentives. Appendix D has your enterprise zone map that I shared at the beginning of the PowerPoint presentation. And then Appendix E has the list of those high unemployment areas throughout the state. The picture on your right is of Rams Petroleum. They opened Rams Cafe in Prince George County. This is a travel center that offers restaurant options. They invested over $2 million and received a $100,000 RPIG. Here are 2 more pictures of grant awardees. The one on the left is Speyside Bourbon Cooperage. They created 19 new jobs this year in Smith County and received $12,592 in job creation grants. And the one on the right is Press Glass, which is the largest independent operation in Europe, but this is their headquarters right in Virginia in Henry County. They employed 212 people and they received a job creation grant in the amount of $131,152 in 2021. And both of these are companies that started last year and received their first job creation grants the first year, and this was their second year receiving those grants. And that's something that is really exciting to see, companies taking advantage of the multiple years that they can get those job creation grants. And this is a friendly reminder that as the LZA, that's part of your job, is to help remind those companies they have so much going on. They might need a call at the beginning of the year to say, hey, don't forget that you have to apply for these grants, and I can help walk you through the process, or I can throw you over to Kate and she can help you and get that reminder in so that we're fully utilizing the funds that we have to help those businesses. So let's talk now, before I take questions, about the minimum wage changes that we've seen happen in the last couple of years. These changes were made in the last year or two, but they are just going into effect now for us in the enterprise zone, because everything that we do is based on calendar year, and our legislation is a little bit different. So of course, these awards are determined based on wage rates and the number of full months worked in the grant year. And according to the Code of Virginia, we use the minimum wage amount from December of the previous year to determine the rate. So for this upcoming year, which is grant year 2022, that means any project that either created jobs in calendar year 2022, or they received their final placed in service document in calendar year 2022. They are going to utilize the December 2021 state minimum wage, and that was $9.50 per hour. The federal was $7.25. And I list that because the legislation specifically says that we use the higher of the two. And so in this case, that's your state minimum wage, which is $9.50 per hour. So those businesses will be eligible for up to $500 per year per net new permanent full-time position earning at least 175% of the the higher minimum wage, which is that state minimum wage. So $9.50 an hour, 175% of that is your $16.63. And for your high unemployment areas, that's $14.25 because they only have to do the 150% threshold. For your $800 per year grants, that's for those companies that are having employees earn at least 200% of the minimum wage. So that's $19 an hour with those health benefits. And it's the same 350 maximum jobs per year. And the minimum wage changes, those will be administrative changes. You do not have to go through your amendment process to make those changes at the local level because you are making the changes congruent with those of the Virginia Code. So you can just make those at the level. You don't have to go through the amendment process. And I will be sending out a one-pager with all of this information on it. And I will also make it so that you can easily add your local information to it. And then you can just print that off and use that for your own purposes or to give to your zone investors. So now is the time to answer any questions that you may have about the information that we have gone over or any other information and questions that you need answered. Please feel free to unmute yourself. I don't see anything in the chat unless I missed it and it disappeared.
Hey, Kate, does the website have the, as I recall, you were going to an electronic application. Is there a link on the website now for employee? I'm sorry that it's so noisy here, but is there a link on the website now to direct people to the application process?
Yes, there is, but the application process isn't open. It will be open in January. I do want to drop a link in the chat because the annual report that I went over today is up on our website, and I want you all to be able to easily get to it. So I am going to drop a link to the PDF for this annual report.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Of course. All right, here's that link. Kim.
Hi, good morning. Do you suggest that for our local benefits packages that we offer investors, do you suggest that we reflect the same wage limits as we do for the
Oh, you mean for your local incentives?
Yes, because well, it means going in and having the city or the county constantly revise, you know, their ordinance for that. So, like ours is based off of federal, and you know, we have I think we have a 150 and a 175 and a 200 based on the current federal. Are we supposed to be reflecting the state rate if it's higher in our local wages as well? I mean, in our local benefits as well?
Legislatively, no, you do not have to. And one way to get around that would be so that you didn't have to change it every year. You could change the language at the local level to say something to the effect of your parameters for minimum wage will be the same as the state legislated parameters. That would help you not have to change the ordinance each time it's changed. But yes, you don't have to do that locally. It's just for the state right now.
Thank you.
Right. It's not required. So if you still wanted to keep those lower, you know, the federal minimum wage as kind of your the parameters for your local incentives, that's fine, because you may be, you know, if you have a downtown, some businesses downtown that might be able to take a benefit of those that may not with the new wage rates for the JCG grants. So you're not required to make them the same as what the state level is. So you know, kind of determine how you want to do that at the local level. If you want to keep it the same as you have, if you do have some parameters around the wages, or if you want to kind of make that change to make them equal to the code, or the language was just changed last year or the year before to say that, yeah, and you could even change that to say the higher of the minimum, or change it to the Virginia minimum wage is going to be higher than the federal
Right.
for some time now. So because it's stepping up every year. So if you want to tie it to the state minimum wage, you could do that as well.
Okay. I think they're making a decision on, what they're going to do to kind of adjust, because it is pretty low with respect to the federal wage. But like you said, the smaller employers, it's a little tougher for them to go those higher levels sometimes. So thank you for that. And while you've got me up, if it's okay if I ask one more, when you're getting investors on board with the state program, everything is still done through CAMS for them. They have to create their own login and do it still themselves, correct?
I know what you mean, but it's actually portal. CAMS is what you all use with us to interact with us.
Okay.
Yeah, and the portal is different, but yes, they do it through that portal process.
And what is the level that they need to have it certified by a CPA, like testate? Is that what it's called? Testation.
So yes, good question. So for the RPIG, that's required for every RPIG, and it's required for JCGs unless you have under 100 employees, that under 100 jobs created. Hold on, let me get that. Let me make sure I have the exact numbers correct. Tori might be able to say it off the top of his head.
If you have less than 25 grant eligible employees, full-time employees, and then a total of 100, less than a total 100 employees. So if they're applying for less than 25 jobs for that year, then they don't have to have an attestation.
And are most CPAs familiar with the process?
It depends. There's a big group of them that do these a lot. Like there's a good 5 or 6 CPAs that do a majority of the grants that are submitted to us, but there are a lot of CPAs who don't know anything about the process. But we do have, I'm going to talk about the how to qualify trainings that we have coming up in January, and we have some of those for CPAs as well to go through that attestation process and what that's going to take on their part and require.
So if a company's CPA is not familiar with the process, and can they decline to take that on? And then what does the investor do? Seek out another CPA?
So technically, they're not allowed to use their own CPA. It has to be someone outside of the company, a third party.
Okay.
And it has to be independent from the company.
So
and if you ever have someone,
yeah,
if you ever have a company that doesn't have a CPA or wants to try to find one that's done it before, we have a list on the website. And in a second, I'll drop that into the chat as well.
Okay.
Do you offer YouTube videos for CPAs or anybody to learn how to fill that out? So recommend that they look at those before they decline to assist their clients.
Okay. Thank you.
Dan, did you have a question too, or something that you wanted to say next?
Yeah, were you going to send out? You're going to send out more information about the minimum wage change. So so I can work with my city attorney to make changes to our ordinance, and then I don't have to go back to the state with that as an amendment, right?
That's right. You don't, as long as you're just making the changes congruent to the statewide legislative changes, then you're fine. You don't have to do anything with an amendment.
All right. Will you please put that language in
writing?
Yes, because my attorneys are skittish.
Sure, I understand, and we will definitely do that. What other questions do folks have? We had lots of good stories to tell with the photos and the information about the businesses this year. I think that adding that to the CAMS helped a lot. You all submitted a lot of that information in those photos, and I appreciate that. It was great. It was very helpful to make the report tell a story of those folks who received grants. If there are no other questions right now, I wanted to let you all know, let me get to the next slide, that we have some things that are upcoming. We are doing some how to qualify events in January. We will, of course, have video and virtual options, But when I sent out a survey about a month ago to the LZAs, I asked, if you were interested in starting up some in-person how to qualifies again. And we had a lot of yeses. We are trying to spread them out across the Commonwealth of Virginia so that they will be near everyone within a 1.5 to 2 hour distance. So far, we have locations in Newport News, Richmond, South Boston, and Marion. We will be getting information to you out about what time and what day those will be, as well as your registration information that you need. We will also be starting the focus group in January. A good number of you stated that you had interest in being a part of the focus group. That will just be a smaller group of LZAs who are interested in jumping on with me and talking about how we can make processes and procedures more efficient and effective for everyone. Also, ideas that you might have on trainings that you would like to see from me. It's just a great way to have open communication. And of course, I'm always willing and open to take phone calls and emails with ideas, thoughts, concerns that any of you might have. And I was remiss not to put Tori's name on this contact too. Tori is the manager for the real property investment team, the real estate team. And he's also a great contact because he was previously in my position and is a wealth of knowledge about the Enterprise Zone program. So if there are no other questions, then I thank you all for taking the time to be with us today. This presentation will be up on our website. It might take a week or so to get up there, according to how busy our PR team is. They do a great job for us. And I look forward to seeing some faces in person in January. And thank you all.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to reiterate and thank every single one of you for the work that you do. You're kind of our boots on the ground at the local level, so you are the ones that are really in touch with the businesses, investors. So we couldn't do our job without you, and we really appreciate that. We're working on ways to make things better for you and easier for you. Kate and I have already talked about next year making some changes to the annual report. It's great to have Kate on board as a former LZA to kind of give a perspective from that from your point of view and some of the things that we can make better and easier for you to report on. But we really do appreciate you sending us in not only your reports, but how it has affected and benefited businesses and your people and the folks within your communities, because as that information goes on to the legislature, that they can kind of put a face to the name and see how it really impacts and is beneficial to not only the state, but their constituents as well. So we appreciate that. Also for next year, we actually got some additional funds for Enterprise Zone grants next year. So we will have at least $16.25 million, I think, in Enterprise Zone grants. And then as you know, this last year, we did not use all of the funds that were appropriated. So those funds will then should be rolled over into that. So it's possible we could have over $17 million available for RPIG and JCG grants. So we think we'll have a big tick up in the number of grants this year. Now as kind of the pandemic has gone away, and also as prices have gone up, costs have gone up for rehabilitation, construction costs as well. So we look forward to that. So if you have any, again, like Kate said, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to help in any way we can. And again, thank you all for your time this morning.
Thank you so much.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.